Good evening, everyone. I am extremely honored to be closing out what has been an awesome conference, the first annual Solana Accelerate. Today, we're going to be talking about how Wormhole has fueled the rise of Solana's internet capital markets and has been doing it since inception. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Robinson. I'm one of the co-founders of the Wormhole Foundation. So what is Wormhole? I think a lot of people that have been in the Solana community for a while are probably familiar, but a quick recap, Wormhole is an interoperability protocol. So Wormhole connects all blockchains to enable value to be transferred between them. So when you think about value within the crypto world or on-chain world today, that could mean things like USDC, USDS, USDT, Bitcoin, BUIDL. We've been talking a lot about RWAs today. ACRED, we've heard from Christine Moy multiple times, tokenized private credit, that also uses Wormhole. From the meme coins to the biggest and largest institutional assets, everything is using the Wormhole. So I mentioned earlier, Wormhole's been with Solana since inception. So Wormhole's been bringing assets. For instance, we got our start connecting Ethereum and Solana. We've been bringing assets from Ethereum to Solana since the beginning. And so you can see here, and I want to call this number and draw a lot of attention to it. Solana, if you look at the TVL today, the TVL is around, I think, in the 9 billions, which is substantial in its own right. Since the inception of Solana, we've transferred to Solana, as we now know it, the internet capital markets, we transferred $11.47 billion or value to the chain. And again, those are RWAs, those are meme coins. And I put some additional context here for some of the other players in the space, some of the data I couldn't find. But we are the native bridge of Solana, and this is our home, and this is where we'll continue to bring value to. So Solana, most of us know, TVL, it's substantial. TPS, it's substantial. Lots of independent validators, and a lot of transactions. Some would say it's the most used and popular blockchain today. I would agree with that. Wormhole, for those of you who don't know, is the leading interoperability protocol. So we've transferred over 60 billion in value between all blockchains, not just Solana and Ethereum. We've done over 1 billion messages. So what does this mean? Every asset transfer requires a message. You're required to share state between, let's say, Solana and Ethereum. So you can build bridges. Most of us know bridges because you probably sent money or some sort of asset between two different chains. But you can also build other protocols. If you've been in the Solana ecosystem for a while, you probably know about Pyth. Pyth is a very popular and well-used oracle. Pyth utilizes Wormhole to go to other chains. So you could do a lot with messaging, and Wormhole today has processed over 1 billion messages. We've helped issue over 4,000 assets cross-chain. So a lot of us are probably familiar with issuing an asset on one chain. I know we've got a lot of stablecoins here, Paxos team here, different asset issuers. So you can sometimes think about what Wormhole can provide as issuing an asset multi-chain, and that's actually what we're going to be talking a lot about today. And then there's over 100 applications that use Wormhole in one way or another, whether it's messaging, whether our assets are on their money market, whether they're using us for intents or swaps to enable someone to do a prediction on a prediction market in USDC. There's tons and tons of different ways you're going to be using cross-chain under the hood. So what I want to talk about today is this one problem that has prevented internet capital markets from thriving, and that's the problem of liquidity fragmentation. So these screenshots I took up here are screenshots from not too long ago. If you look at your wallet, let's say, you would see, and you're on a single chain, you would see 5 different versions of a singular asset. And if you've been doing things on chain for a while, this probably doesn't look, this probably looks familiar to you. So you can have multiple different versions of USDC, multiple different versions of USDT, Bitcoin versions, ETH versions, and the list goes on. And if we think about shifting the financial system from off-chain to on-chain, how are we going to do that in a system where the dollars aren't even fungible or the stable coins aren't even fungible? And so what we've been doing, or what the problem we've been working on solving, is this problem of liquidity fragmentation. How do you make it so that, and I sometimes think about, just a side note, you opening your mobile banking app right now, and if you look at like USD, right, your bank account number, imagine if there's like 4 different versions. almost like they're separate accounts and they're not fungible. That's kind of what the experience is like, especially for people coming into the ecosystem. And so why this is important, if you think again about building a financial system on chain, if I'm a developer, I'm building a DEX. What's important for a DEX? Depth of liquidity, right? You want to provide really good trades. You want to provide liquidation mechanisms for those building on top of you. What stablecoin or what Bitcoin or what Ethereum is a DEX going to build liquidity in if there's 4 or 5 different versions of the same thing on a chain? So in order to have like that financial oil that's going to help everything else thrive on the chain, we have to solve liquidity fragmentation. And we've solved it. So we solve liquidity fragmentation with what I call native token transfers. This is Wormhole NTT. And so there's a lot of words on the screen here, but I'll go over it and break it down. You've essentially got an open source framework. So it's completely open source. Well, everything Wormhole does is out in the open. That's a core ethos that we hold, and we think it's important to do that with everything we build. It's flexible and configurable, and we'll talk about that. And it's also composable. So when you think about going cross-chain or taking a token cross-chain, there's a number of ways you can do it. And I think what we've done today is we've offered you a burn and mint solution. So let's say you're just, for the first time, launching a token. You can set it up from day one, so it's multi-chain, right? It could exist across 5 different chains. You own the contracts so that there's only one version across those other chains. Someone else can't send that asset and create another version on that chain. And then let's say you've already launched a token. Maybe some of you are protocol builders here, or you've issued some sort of asset. There's also a hub and spoke model that's configurable for you to use as well. And so there's 3 core components I want to talk about that are a little bit different from what we've seen in the past. So I talked a little bit about integrator-owned deployment. So if you think back to that slide I showed you with all the different USDCs, a lot of that is caused because there's multiple different types of owners of an asset, right? Circle owns USDC, but 7 different bridges can issue their own type of USDC on a chain and try to get adoption for it. But let's say Circle owns the contract. As soon as they do that, that's the one that everyone's going to use. So what you're solving for here from the jump is that you as the asset issuer, instead of, let's say, the bridge owning the contract, you own the contracts. So you completely control them. You control upgrade authority. You control all the features we're about to talk about. It is the gold standard for issuing a token across all chains. And when we think about the various controls that you have, a lot of it has to do with security, right? So you can pause it, you can upgrade it, you can rate limit, right? You could say, let's say I only want 3 million of flow to go between 2 different chains every 24 hours, right? You want to throttle it. Why would you maybe want that? Maybe you issue an asset net new on a chain that's very, very new, right? We'd like to think that the chain will be fine, but something new has a higher chance of, let's say, getting hacked. So you'll keep that rate limit low so you can avoid if, say, the worst case happens, your total potential damage is limited to whatever you set the rate limit to. And then Wormhole's actually built a blockchain. A lot of people don't know this. But we built a blockchain for the sole purpose of having another ledger we can reference for all the activity that's happening between blockchains Wormhole connects. And so this is what we call global accounting. And so when you think about this, effectively what it is at a high level is that every transaction that's happening across Wormhole contracts is also happening on the global accountant. If there's an infinite mint, what do I mean by an infinite mint? If you're sending 10 USDC from one chain to yourself on another one, and on that chain it mints 11 or something like that, the global accountant sees that, breaks the connection to the chain to help contain any potential contagion that may be happening in, let's say, a hack. And lastly, there's flexible verification. So this one is actually really, really important. So NTT is a framework where you actually don't have to use Wormhole messaging, which is kind of a bold move on our part because, of course, we want as many messages, as much volume going through Wormhole. But I think one thing we believe is that we want to win on technical merit, and we believe the security model we have with Wormhole messaging is the strongest. So if you did want to issue an asset with NTT, you're going to want to use Wormhole messaging. But if you didn't want to, you could be your own signer, right? You can be your own signer for NTT. You could use another interoperability protocol. You could use a restaking verifier if you wanted. It's endless, but the point is that it's future-proof. You own the contracts. if something happened to the messaging provider in those contracts, let's say in the worst case a hack, you upgrade the contracts, remove the messaging provider, put whichever one you'd like in there to continue on. We just went over rate limiting, the global accountant. The other thing I want to say, and we touched on no lock-in, right? We want to give you the option to have who you want within the NTT contracts. But the last thing that I think is important, and what I think makes this the end game, is threshold attestations. What does that word mean? So in order, if you want to send 10 USDC from one chain to another, typically what Wormhole does is it says, yep, 10 USDC was burned on one chain. Please mint on another chain, effectively. Now, if something happens to Wormhole messaging, then something happens to your asset, which isn't the most ideal situation. However, if you added in another redundant messaging system, again, it could be a centralized signer that is you yourself, then you can say, I want two approvals once you hit the mint, right? So you could say a Wormhole message 1, and then your signer being 2. And then all of a sudden, you have this very, very redundant and robust verifier for whenever your asset that you issue is traveling between all the different blockchains, something that you can rely on. So why this is important and why this is exciting. And this was talked a little bit about yesterday, so it's not the freshest news, but it's so exciting, I think it's worth talking about a little bit more. When we think about Solana, it is a place where everything is tradable with the best user experience. So the biggest assets should be on Solana. And at the beginning, I started by saying, since inception, since Solana started, Wormhole has been bringing assets to Solana. And we still see that as our goal and our mission and one thing we want to do. And so today, I'm really, really excited to announce that Dogecoin, this is already outdated. It's a $35 billion asset. That amount of value will now be accessible to Solana. And we've done this, or also 8.3 million wallets. Of course, that's a lot more users that can now come to Solana. And we've done this in conjunction, well, before I get there, this is what it would look like or will look like very soon within the Portal front end. Portal is Wormhole's main application interface. It's how you can use a lot of the asset transfers that Wormhole powers. And we've done this in conjunction with Sai, not QED, with Sai. They've done an incredible job of making sure that Doge, the chain, is verifiable, so we can perform the mint of the asset Doge on Solana. We've also been working with a team called Interface that's been helping with some of this work. And of course, Solana and Wormhole to make Dogecoin officially enter the Wormhole. So issue your asset on Solana. If you already have issued an asset on Ethereum or Arbitrum or any other chain, you can have it exist there. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have it exist there. You can have it on Solana. If you're issuing asset on Solana today, you might as well make it configurable if you do want to go to another chain someday. So from Dogecoin to BlackRock, Apollo Private Credit, Wormhole will be with Solana. Wormhole's been with Solana since the beginning and will be with Solana for as long to come. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate the time.